You'd think I'd have the whole collection by now. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. I released part 1 of this holiday Blu-ray haul last Friday, and now it's time for part 2. While part 1 had a mix of standard releases, this second part is going to consist exclusively of Criterion Collection movies. With only a couple exceptions, I almost always get my Criterions during half-off sales, since they're so much more expensive than regular Blu-rays. My go-to is Barnes & Noble's biannual Criterion sale, and I tend to buy from the November sale more frequently than the April one. With that in mind, I have a lot of movies to include in this second part of the haul. Like with part 1, this is a mix of movies that I got during these end-of-the-year sales, or received for Christmas, and is entirely made up of Blu-rays. Unlike most years, the ratio of blind buys to films I've seen before is actually pretty close. Now, I know that this might be blasphemous to some Criterion fans, but I think alphabetical is always just a little easier in a film like this, so I'm going to go through these in alphabetical order rather than by spine number. If you're interested in getting any of these movies yourself, I do have affiliate links to almost all of them in the description below. I do get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Alright, so first up is Arsenic and Old Lace. So this is spine number 1153, 1944 film directed by Frank Capra. I have seen this one, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. This is a screwball comedy, which I tend to not really... I'm not a huge screwball fan. But this is a screwball Halloween comedy, and it gets really dark. It's very bizarre, and was much better than I anticipated it being. So I liked this one, and this is a fairly recent Criterion release, and I was excited when I saw that it was getting released. So happy to have this one in my collection as well as the collection. Next up is Buck and the Preacher. So this is spine number 1140 and was directed by Sidney Poitier. So this was his directorial debut in 1972. He also stars in the film with Harry Belafonte. I've never seen this one. I know it's a Western kind of buddy film, I guess, but I don't really know too much about it, but I do, or in terms of the story, but I do really like Sidney Poitier, in general, and I don't think I've actually seen a film he's directed before, so I guess it's good that I'm going to be starting off with his, debut. Next, we've got Cure. So this is spine number 1155, came out in 1997 and was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. So I have not seen this movie, but I have heard of it before it was in the collection. I know it's a very dark film, that there's kind of this psychological crime thriller aspect to it. It seems like it has some connections or some similarities to a lot of other crime thrillers from other countries, not just Japan. But it also seems like one that I'm going to probably very much enjoy. So I'm looking forward to checking this one out. Next is Devil in a Blue Dress, another film that I've not seen. So this is spine number 1135, came out in 1995. And is a period piece film starring Denzel Washington, who kind of becomes from my understanding, sort of an impromptu private investigator and gets wrapped up in some crimes that are related to the investigation. I've heard of this film, and I know that Denzel Washington is known for giving a good performance in it. So another one that I was pretty excited to see join the Criterion Collection, because it kind of gave me that extra push to finally get it so I can see it. One that I have seen before is Double Indemnity, which has now actually become a double dip for me in terms of Blu-ray, because I already had this on Blu-ray. But now it's in the Criterion Collection, so obviously I have to get it. So Spy Number 1126 came out in 1944, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Barbara Stanwyck, Fred MacMurray, Edward G. Robinson. This is one of those very classic film noir films, thrillers. This was one that I saw pretty early. I saw parts of this when I was younger, but then when I was in high school and a film class I was taking in high school, we spent a lot of time on this movie, analyzing the cinematography and especially the lighting, the Venetian blinds. We probably spent 2 whole class periods just talking about the significance of the Venetian blinds and the lighting that we get from those. So this is a movie that I like quite a bit. Though, honestly, I haven't seen it in a while. Probably a decade at the minimum, I would say. And so definitely due for a rewatch of this one. And I'll get to rewatch it in Criterion, and as well as see the special features, which seems like there's quite a few more than the Blu-ray that I already had of this. Next up is a newer film. So this is a 2021 movie, and that's Drive My Car. So Spy Number 1136, directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. This one won Best International Feature at last year's Oscars. So I have seen this. I saw that in preparation for the Oscars, and I enjoyed this one. It wouldn't have been my pick, my personal pick for that category last year, but I can understand why so many people enjoyed it and wanted that win. This one is much more, I guess, subdued and slower than I was expecting it to be. So now knowing that, I'm curious how it's gonna go on rewatch for me. Kind of with that just mental preparation and expectation. But this is kind of an interesting layered drama about grief and relationships and loss and just dealing with all of those things. So I was surprised that it made it into the Criterion Collection, and especially so quickly, but now I get to rewatch it. Next up is Eve's Bayou. So this is Spy Number 1154, released in 1997 and directed by Casey Lemons. Before it was inducted into the collection, I had never heard of this one, but it sounds like something I'm going to enjoy, at least I hope. Seems like kind of this period piece drama about, all sorts of secrets and things. Stars Samuel L. Jackson and Jurnee Smollett. And so I'm looking forward to this one. It's, like I said, it's one that I had not heard of before it became a part of the Criterion Collection. But that's one of the cool things about Criterion, I think, because oftentimes there's a lot of movies that I otherwise wouldn't have known about. And so, again, gives me some nice incentive to check out some of these movies. Next up is a film that I was aware of before its induction into the collection, and that's The Flight of the Phoenix. So this is Spy Number 1116, released in 1965, directed by Robert Aldrich. So although I knew about this film, I had never seen it, or still have never seen it, obviously still in the plastic here. And so the only reason I know about this is because of the remake from 2005, I want to say, with Dennis Quaid, which I saw in theaters, not knowing that it was a remake until after the fact. So basically this is a survival story. We've got a cargo plane that crashes in the Sahara and strands these guys, and they have to figure out how to not only survive being stranded in the desert without any supplies, or without many supplies at least, but also how to get themselves out of there, because clearly nobody's going to be coming across them by chance. I'm excited to look at this one. it's been on kind of my watch list for pretty much since the remake came out. So excited to finally have a chance and again an excuse to see that movie. Next one is The Girl Can't Help It. So this is spy number 1120, and this came out in 1956. So this was a movie that I was aware of because of the Beatles. So I think it's probably, maybe, I don't know, at least within people who like the Beatles, the claim to fame of this movie and what people know about this movie. Basically, Paul and John would sneak into this movie when it was in theaters, and they kind of didn't steal, but they were inspired by some of the performances in this movie, and they incorporated some of kind of the performative techniques into their own shows. Got it. And so that's pretty much what I knew about it going in. But it is about the music industry. It is about kind of music business, a comedy. And it also introduces rock and roll stars like Little Richard, Fats Domino, Julie London, Gene Vincent, The Platters, and Eddie Cochran. So, seems like something that could be good. Next, we've got The Human Condition by Masaki Kobayashi. So this is spy number 480. So this is one that's been in the collection for a while. Only just finally got around to picking it up. There are actually 3 films in this, sort of. It's 3 films, but it's 6 parts. This is like 9.5 hours long. So it was released between 1959 and 1961. And basically follows this guy, this Japanese guy, throughout World War II, and kind of his personal journey and all the things he has to do and kind of gets roped into or gets forced to do. And it's supposed to be an impactful, kind of powerful film on the human condition. So I suspect it's going to be a bit of a dense one, a little bit different than some of these other films, but definitely one that I need to eventually get around to watching. Next up is another 3-film set. Kind of weird that they go together alphabetically, but that's the Infernal Affairs trilogy. So this is spy number 1159. 3 films from 2002 to 2003. And this one is or at least the series, is kind of an action crime thriller. We've got, infiltration and with police officers and the mafia and kind of criminal underground and just kind of the melding of those two things and those two things being at odds, but also being kind of one and the same. And so this is a trilogy that I've not seen, but I've been aware of at least the first film for, about a decade and a half now, because The Departed, Martin Scorsese's The Departed, is a remake or a kind of American adaptation of the first Infernal Affairs film. I've heard that it's pretty similar, and so curious to kind of see just how similar it is. Next up is La Llorona. So this is spy number 1156, and is the kind of second big La Llorona film from 2019. This one is not part of the Conjuring universe, but instead is a Guatemalan film that kind of blends folk horror with political drama. Haven't seen this one, but have heard good things about it. A friend of mine really, really highly recommended it back then, and I'm only just now getting around to finally being able to see it. Next up, we've got Letter Never Sent. So this is spy number 601, so it's been in the collection for a while. Came out in 1959. It's a Soviet film, And it's one that I actually have watched since I got it, so I did open this one already. This was actually my first movie of the year this year. And this is kind of an interesting blend. There's a survival drama aspect to it. You know, we've got these geologists who end up getting stranded in Siberia, and it's the winter and they have to try to survive. But there's also a lot of, I don't know, deeper stuff, like existential, sort of bleak stuff going on in this movie. So it's kind of a weird combination, fitting but weird. It's it's not a particularly uplifting film, but it's got some really really good cinematography. I was very much impressed by a lot of the shots in this movie. So it is one that I would recommend. However, I was really disappointed to find that there were no special features on this. Like, it says there's special features, but it's just the soundtrack and new English subtitle translation. Like, there's no behind the scenes, there's no trailer, there's no anything. And usually Criterion has a lot of that, or at least some sort of, video essay on it. So that was kind of a bummer, but the movie itself was good. Next up, we've got Malcolm X. So this is spy number 1160. This is 1992, Spike Lee joint, and one that I haven't seen. So that's kind of embarrassing to admit, because I really should have seen this film by now, but I haven't. So we've got Denzel Washington starring as Malcolm X. And I have no excuse for not having seen this movie. This is a big one. It's got Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett, Delroy Lindo, Albert Hall. Like, this is one that I should have seen a long time ago, so I'll be able to rectify that now. Next up is Miller's Crossing. So this one I have seen, and this is another double dip like Double Indemnity was, because I already have this on Blu-ray, but now I have it on Criterion Blu-ray. So spy number 1112, and this is a Coen Brothers movie, came out in 1990, and is kind of this, I don't know, this sort of noir-inspired gangster crime drama period piece. It's like set in the 20s. It's okay. It's not my favorite Coen Brothers movie, but I'm very curious to check out the special features, which actually exist on this one, unlike Letter Never Sent. Because usually that, sometimes when I come across these types of movies that the first time I watched, or first couple times I watched, I was kind of like, it's okay. When I see the special features and the analysis and behind the scenes and stuff, it oftentimes gives a greater appreciation, or at least a different understanding. So I'm hoping that makes me like this one a little bit more than I already do. Next up, we've got Mr. Klein. So this is spy number 1123. It's a 1976 French film starring Alain Delon. And this is kind of it seems like it's going to be, I've never seen it, but it seems like it's going to be a wrong man thriller. Basically, Mr. Klein gets mistaken for another guy who has the same name, and he has to try to kind of clear his name, or, there's a mistaken identity component to it. I tend to like movies like that. I like wrong man thrillers, so I'm hoping I'm going to like this one. Another film like Eve's Bayou that I had never heard of before it became part of the Criterion Collection. So excited to check it out. Next up is My Winnipeg. So this came out in 2007. Spy number 741. Been in the collection for a while now. Directed by Guy Maddin. And this is one that I've been kind of eyeing for a number of years, but never ended up buying it until now. I don't know if I'm going to like this movie. It seems like one that might actually kind of annoy me with the way it, I think, is supposed to blend kind of fantasy and reality and all sorts of things. I don't know if I'm going to like the movie, but honestly, this is one, and there have been very few, but a couple Criterion films that I ended up, pulling the trigger on because of the poster art. It's really, I don't know, there's just like a horse in, I don't even know, blood or something. It's a really weird poster, but intriguing. And so I was sitting there looking at the stuff online, and I was just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it this year. So we'll see. Next up is Night and Fog. So this is spy number 197, directed by Alan Rene. Came out in 1955. This is really short. It's like 35 minutes long, 32 minutes long. So it's basically a short, but it's kind of, I believe it's more of a documentary short. Basically, this kind of documents the sort of abandoned concentration camps and sort of juxtaposes it with like these abandoned scenes with, the horrors that happened in those locations. So I've heard about this one, and it's another one, much like my Winnipeg, that I've been kind of eyeing for several years now, wanting to see. Certainly wanting to see this more than that last film. But I don't know. I suspect it's going to be a fairly impactful, kind of hard to watch short, but I'm happy I have it. Next up is Okja. So this is spy number 1133. Came out in 2017, directed by Bong Joon-ho. And this one is a film, another one that I've been wanting to watch for quite a while. I remember when this was on Netflix, not long after it was released. It might have debuted on Netflix, actually. But I was really, really surprised when I saw that it was going to join the Criterion Collection. So like I said, this is one that I've wanted to kind of check out for a while. It's sort of this fantasy. It's like a weird combo, though. There's a fantasy element because there's this girl who befriends this, like, genetically altered super pig thing. And there's this, like, conspiracy with a corporation and all sorts of things. We've got a lot of big name actors in this. Tilda Swinton, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano, Steven Yeun, a lot of things. Been very curious about this one. I tend to like Bong Joon-ho's movies, but haven't seen this one yet, and now I get to. Next one is one that I have seen, and that's One Night in Miami. So this was Regina King's directorial debut in 2020, spy number 1106. So I saw this leading up to the Oscars that year, because it was nominated for a few categories, I believe. Interestingly enough, it's my second film in this Criterion Hall that features Malcolm X, because this focuses on one night in Miami in 1964 when Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke all kind of met up and were going to have a night where they were going to hang out, and it turns into other things. So I liked this movie. It was a pretty kind of slow one, based on a play, but I was really surprised that Criterion picked it up. So next one here is one that is not quite so recent, and that's The Phantom Carriage. So this movie's from 1921. So this one's 102 years old versus 3 years old on that last one. So spy number 579. It's a Swedish silent film. I fairly recently finally watched this in its entirety. I've seen pieces of it over the years, but it was just this past October that I finally watched it. And then I remembered it was in the Criterion Collection, and I was like, well, I liked it, so let me pick it up. So this is kind of this dark New Year's Eve kind of ghostly tale, like kind of a moral tale. It's got some really cool shots and some kind of cool special effects for 1921. So I enjoyed this one, and it's kind of fun watching it and being able to pick out the influences that it had on like Ingmar Bergman, for instance. So pretty influential and surprisingly interesting silent film from 1921. Next up, kind of going back to more recent, and that's The Power of the Dog. So this is spy number 1159, came out in 2021. So this was directed by Jane Campion, who actually won Best Director for this film. This is kind of a psychological western, sort of psychological drama, I should say, starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Cody Smith-McPhee primarily. And this was one I did like it. Surprised Criterion's picked it up, especially so soon. But it wasn't, I don't know. It's another one that I really want to rewatch, especially check out the special features to hopefully gain a bit more appreciation for it than I think I have currently. Next is Raging Bull. So this is spy number 1134. Film came out in 1980, directed by Martin Scorsese. And this is another one of those very embarrassing to admit scenarios where I have never seen this movie before. I don't know how I've managed to not see it, but I haven't. That will soon be rectified. But this stars Robert De Niro as a boxer who, from the sounds of it, has some trouble kind of balancing or separating his life in the ring versus out of the ring. And so it's kind of this drama about him and his family and his career. And I really, really need to watch this one. Next is a film that I have seen, and that's Sound of Metal. So this is spy number 1151. This movie came out, well, technically it didn't come out until 2020, but it's a 2019 film. This is one that I have seen and really enjoy, and I have a review for it up on the channel. So this was directed by Darius Marder and stars Riz Ahmed as a drummer in a band, kind of a noise punk band, noise metal punk. And he suddenly loses almost all of his hearing. And it's this very, very stressful movie, very scary movie in that sort of medical sense. But it's also a very poignant movie and a very heartfelt movie, seeing his journey through kind of dealing with this sudden loss of his hearing, which, you know, is related to his livelihood. He's a drummer, he's a musician. But this movie, kind of the coolest thing to me, or my favorite aspect of this, beyond the story, beyond the acting, was the sound design. It's really, really cool how it incorporates sound, and then especially lack of sound, or muffled sounds in certain situations and from certain points of view, or points of hearing, I guess. So really good. Surprised Criterion got it, but very happy they did, because I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I really wanted it to get an actual physical Blu-ray release. Next, we've got Sweet Smell of Success. So this is spy number 555. Was released in 1957. And this one stars Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. I've not seen this movie, but it's one that I've been aware of for quite a while. I know that it has a lot of, I believe, unlikable characters who do a lot of really not great things to each other. But that the dialogue and kind of banter and back and forth is supposed to be really good. That kind of, it's this New York City set story. Basically, one of these characters is kind of upset that the other one is dating his sister, and decides that he doesn't want that to be happening, and that he's going to do whatever it takes to make it stop happening. So I don't really know much beyond that, but I do know that it's a very, very well-known and very highly regarded film. Next is To Be or Not to Be. So this is spy number 670, came out in 1942, and this one I have seen. This one is another film that's kind of touted as a screwball comedy, and it is to a certain extent, and certain kind of relationship aspects within the film, but I have to say that I was surprised by how much more it was beyond just a screwball comedy. This is like a war drama. It's like a spy, espionage, war thriller kind of thing combined with the screwball comedy aspects. It's kind of a weird combination, but a good one. It's satirical, it's got a lot of dark humor, and this was a film that I watched somewhat recently. And then I don't know how, but I had forgotten or didn't even realize it was in the Criterion Collection. And then I was looking at the sale, and I saw it, and I was like, I just watched this, so wanted to pick it up. Next is another film that I have seen before many a time, and that is Wally. So this is kind of an exciting release within the Criterion Collection. Spy number 1161. 2008 Pixar film directed by Andrew Stanton. It's Pixar, man. Like, Pixar is in the Criterion Collection. I don't understand exactly how or why this one got in, why this one was selected. It seems like it's going to be kind of a one-off thing, but maybe we're going to see more Criterion Pixar films at some point. But I like Wally an awful lot. Seen Wally a ton of times. I'm going to see it again now, and now I'll see it in 4K. So I'm very curious. I'm very excited. There's a ton of special features. Like, 3/4 of the back is just tiny font of special features. Obviously it's like a slip box, one of these bigger sets, multiple discs, so I'm excited to check out the Criterion version of Wally. And then we've got The Worst Person in the World. So this is spy number 1132. This is a film that came out in 2021, a Norwegian film. I have seen this one because it was nominated for Best International Feature for that year. Didn't win, lost to Drive My Car, which is also in the Criterion Collection recently. But I liked this one. It wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, but basically it follows the main character, Julie, through 3, 4, 5 years of her life, throughout her 20s, and kind of goes with her as she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life in terms of career, figuring out relationships, and kind of just what's going on. It's this navigating life kind of movie. Has some comedic aspects, but also kind of sad, pretty sad at times. But it was one that I didn't anticipate liking, really. Honestly, like, when I saw it, this was a TIFF film that year, and I don't know, it was very hyped up, people were excited for it, and then I saw it, and I was like, that was actually much better than I thought it was going to be. Very surprised it's in the Criterion Collection, but again, like with some of the other surprises, I'm not unhappy that it's in the Criterion Collection. Alright, so that was part 2 of my 2022 holiday Blu-ray haul. Part 1, which was the non-Criterion half of the haul, is already available, so please give that one a watch too to see the other movies that I got. So, did you get any Criterions for the holidays? Seen any of the movies that I got? Let me know your thoughts and all of your pickups in the comments below. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this haul video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.